know Macumba? Voodoo. Granddad was a priest in Trinidad. He used to tell us, when there's no more room in hell, the dead will walk here.
What we are dealing with here is a perfect engine.
What's your favorite scary movie?
It doesn't feel pity or remorse or fear, and it absolutely will not stop until you are dead.
I can't lie to you about your chances. You have my sympathies.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the podcast formerly known as The Reverse Shot, now known as Sometimes They Come Back. I am Quinn Bailey.
And I am Max Corman, and today we're going to do something a little different. And when I mean different, I mean this whole podcast is going to be different from the normal Reverse Shot. We are covering primarily horror series and franchises. We're watching them, we're talking about them, we're ranking them, we're discussing them, we're debating them. Any other verbs?
I do not have a thesaurus with me right now, so no, I do not have anything.
That is a lie. You have your computer in front of you.
Yeah, but I don't want to press the keys because that will appear on the audio, and that might just drown everything out. Anyways, we are rambling. Anyways, to cut to the point, there are a lot of horror series out there, right? There are a lot of them.
At least a couple dozen.
At least a couple dozen. And a lot of them tend to last fairly long, is the thing. There tend to be a lot of movies in your usual horror series. Now, our idea for this is, that's a lot of material. So the way we're approaching this is that we are going to tackle one series per episode, and we have a couple minor rules that we're going to approach with this. First is that, basically with each episode, we are going to try to cover every single installment in a franchise. That means not just sequels. That is going to be also prequels. That is going to be reboots and alternate timelines. That's even going to be films that are adapted from the same source material but aren't actually part of the more famous series proper. That's every possible version. We're going to be probably sticking to film on this unless we later branch out, but for now, we're not going to do TV series or video games. We're just going to focus on the movie.
Occasionally, if there's a famous book, we might read that real for fun.
Yeah, we already have one later series planned where we are going to tackle the book, but for the most part, we're going to try sticking to movies at first. Second, we are going to try to split these series only when necessary. So if something is just too long for us to tackle in one episode, we are going to do that and split into multiple episodes, but only when it is necessary. So maybe not for like a regular series, but for something like Godzilla, where there are dozens of entries, definitely will be split into multiple parts. And third, this is a very minor rule, but we are only going to tackle crossovers between two or more different series with the last episode of the series. So if, let's say, Alien vs. Predator, we will not tackle Alien vs. Predator until we have done both Alien and Predator and include those as part of whatever episode comes second, sort of as a basic rule.
Which is disappointing because I love Alien vs. Predator and I can't wait to get to that one.
It'll be a treat. We'll work up to that. Additionally, we're not just going to be covering like the big name series. We're not just going to be covering like the very obvious famous ones. This is a show about all kinds of horror franchises, not just the ones that are really famous. So we're going to try to shake it up a bunch and especially focus on sort of the franchises that not a lot of people talk about as much.
Or just the notorious ones that no one wants to watch, so we do it for them.
Yeah.
And that brings us to today's movie. So
that brings us to the Leprechaun franchise.
We could have chosen Psycho or Halloween, but we decided Leprechaun. We have the Blu-ray for. I think I got it as a gift for you.
You got it as a gift
like
for me,
like a holiday or birthday gift.
For a birthday, yes.
And so
I still don't know why.
Well, before this, I guess happy little accidents. We had the DVDs, so we watched them all.
Yeah, Max's idea to me a few months back, that is kind of the genesis of all this, was we have the Leprechaun movies. Let's watch all the Leprechaun movies. And then we came up with this podcast as basically a way of justifying our own choices to ourselves. Just as a way of saying, no, we're not wasting our lives watching all these Leprechaun movies. We're making a podcast. That's it. We're making a podcast. Definitely not watching these out of morbid curiosity.
Well, I think we got to like part 3 before we decided to do a podcast. So we were, for a while, having an existential dread that we were wasting our lives. And, you know, deep down I know we still are, but, you know, Warwick Davis was entertaining enough.
Yeah.
So
We're
I regret
still
nothing.
wasting our lives, but we're wasting them for your enjoyment.
For everyone who doesn't want to watch the Leprechaun series or is not sure if they want to.
Or if just want to know which ones to watch and which ones to skip.
And there is a couple that you should watch, I would say. We will get to those.
We will get to them. But first, let me do a quick rundown of the films in the series that we will be covering today. We have Leprechaun, released in 1993, directed and written by Mark Jones. We have Leprechaun 2, released 1 year later in 1994, directed by Rodman Flender. We have Leprechaun 3, released in 1995, directed by Brian Trenchard-Smith, who we will discuss later. And then 2 years later, we have Leprechaun 4, In Space, also directed by Brian Trenchard-Smith. There's a 3-year gap, and then we get Leprechaun in the Hood, directed by Rob Spera. 3 years later, we get Leprechaun Back to the Hood.
The
Hood, T-H-A, and the number 2 in place of the word 2. This is released in 2003. This is directed by Stephen Aramloy. I cannot pronounce this man's name, which is why I'm not going to try to. We'll just call him Stephen. This is the point where the series changes hands from Trimark, who have released the first 5 films, to Lionsgate, who released the others. In 2014, nearly a decade absence, we get Leprechaun Origins, which is directed by Zach Lipovsky. And then 4 years later, we get the Sci-Fi Channel original film Leprechaun Returns, directed by Steven Kostanski. And with that said...
Well, I will do an honorable mention. We never finished it, but there is a movie called An Unlucky Leprechaun.
A very unlucky leprechaun.
No, I think it's just An Unlucky Leprechaun.
No, it's a very unlucky leprechaun.
He's a very... and the reason why this is an honorable mention is because it fits into... It's a Warwick Davis Leprechaun movie. He is Leprechaun Returns as... a nice leprechaun this time, and it fits into my theory of multi-leprechauns.
We'll get into the multiple leprechaun theory later.
We got through half of it, and then we just got tired and didn't finish it. We might finish it later.
It's a very late 90s children's
It's a Roger Corman produced movie, which is made me very happy to see his name.
Yeah.
It's very different because his kill count in that movie is slightly less, but I don't think it was 0.
I do not believe it was 0, actually. I'm pretty sure... It did, however, have scenes that are possibly more horrifying than anything in the actual Leprechaun films. There is at least one scene where he produces a living starfish with human lips, and it is one of the most horrifying things I have ever seen.
And then they have to chase it through the city. And
and it's just making these horrifying squeaking noises, and then... what was the villain in it named? The villain it was named...
McGreedy.
McGreedy. That is the kind of children's movie we are talking about. This is not exactly a subtle film. It is, by purest technicality, a Leprechaun film because A, it is a film in which Warwick Davis plays a leprechaun, and B, it has as much in common with Leprechaun 1 in terms of continuity as most of the other Leprechaun movies.
Well, at least this one took place in Ireland.
Yeah, that is... There is another one that takes place in Ireland, but we will get to that one. Oh God, we will get to that one.
I forgot that one actually took place in Ireland.
Yeah. There is good reason why we can forget that one took place in Ireland.
So, shall we start with part 1?
We will begin with the original, 1993's Leprechaun. And I have a little bit of history on the background of this movie, actually.
What is it?
So, Mark Jones is the creator of the Leprechaun franchise. He's a former American television director who decided to get into low-budget horror films as a chance to kind of break out into film. He was heavily inspired by the movie Critters, which had come out around a similar time and also had a very small, chaotic kind of antagonist. He was also very inspired by the Lucky Charms commercials, which is why there's a lot of Lucky Charms jokes in this movie. This was... began production sort of late 80s, went through a lot of changes during production. Warwick Davis was brought on pretty early. This is a very young Jennifer Aniston as the female lead in it.
Oh, and there's a funny story about that. I remember we went to see, like, a while ago, Jennifer Aniston was winning, like, she was winning some award, and we went to see it, and she's talking about her history, and I was just waiting for her to mention Leprechaun, and... it seemed like they were taking great pains to never mention this movie, and I just thought that was funny. And they were taking audience questions, and I was raising my hand. I'm like, hey, I was really wanting to ask her about Leprechaun.
Yeah, there is this series. I will say there is one or 2 points where, like, more notably Aniston, where a famous person shows up. This is not going to be as heavy on the famous people before they are famous as other franchises are. You're going to see that a lot more in something like Friday the 13th or Halloween, or surprisingly enough, Children of the Corn.
Oh yeah.
We'll get to that next episode. But for now, Leprechaun 1 was shot around 1991, went through a lot of changes in production. It was originally much more of a serious horror film, but then Warwick Davis wants to incorporate more like dark comedy elements into it, so it's just a sort of a PG-13 horror comedy. But then Trimark, the studio, comes back in and says they want more gore into it, so it shifts back up to an R. So there's this weird down-to-up sweep with it in terms of what they're going for in terms of tone. And the final film we get, should I do a quick recap of it, or do you want to?
I mean, you want to do like a plot summary?
Yeah, this will just be a very quick plot summary. Basic plot of the film is that 1983, an Irish immigrant returns to North Dakota with a pot of gold he's stolen from a leprechaun, who is of course played by Warwick Davis. At this point, the leprechaun, who is a total psychopath, tracks him home, kills his wife, and nearly kills him before he is suppressed by the man using his weakness, a 4-leaf clover, against him and sealing him away in a crate in the house's basement. So 10 years after that happens, Jennifer Aniston's character, Tori, arrives at the house with her father, who's trying to remodel the house for the summer. They're also joined by Nathan, who is a local contract worker. We'll get to him. Alex, who is Nathan's brother, and Ozzy, who is their sort of handyman and also kind of the shining star of some of these films, the ones he's in. Again, we'll get to him. As it goes with horror movies, they go into where they should not be. They decide to open the crate that probably should not be opened, and the leprechaun is released in search of his gold, and slasher movie things happen from there.
Gold. I will say I like in this movie. What was the name of the little kid in it? The Alex or
Alex, yes.
This is the only one with a child protagonist, and I think that works for a killer leprechaun movie that's goofy.
Yeah.
You know, making a scary leprechaun. I feel like
it has very technically 2 child protagonists. It very technically has 2 child protagonists, but I don't know if Jennifer Aniston counts, because that's very much 20-something trying to play a teenager, so I don't think that counts.
Well, how old was she supposed to be?
She was... It just says teenage, so it could be anything. It could be anything in that range.
Like, other movies had teenagers, but I just think that the idea of having like an actual kid going up against a leprechaun, it just fits, I think.
Yeah, it kind of fits the tone of this series, which is something I want to bring up, because this movie, and you can tell it's kind of because of all the things that happened in pre-production, but this movie has a very odd tone. The best way I can describe it is it feels like a Disney Channel original movie with a body count.
Yeah, it does. It feels like at the beginning it's going to say, like, you know, like you get a sweeping view of the farmhouse, and it'll just say a Disney Channel original movie, and then like leprechaun blood dripping from the letters or something.
Yeah, it's and it has very much that tone of like a
very
Disney original movie. It's very like goofy, a lot of like very broad slapstick comedy, a lot of very silly one-liners and like intentionally like very like broad comedic moments, but there's also a body count and cursing, which I think is inherently funny and kind of part of the charm of the movie. That it kind of feels like a children's movie that stumbled into the wrong direction.
So the legend I've heard about this movie, of just my favorite line in it, I don't know if we're allowed to swear in this podcast.
I think we're allowed to swear.
All right, we'll bleep it out for the youngins. But the story goes that I heard is that they were filming it with like the okay from to use product placement from Lucky Charms, and then as they saw how gruesome the movie was or something, they pulled out, and the director was frustrated. So that's why they end the line right before they slingshot the 4-leaf clover. The little kid says, "Fuck you, Lucky Charms," and it's just like a very fourth wall break kind of, for people who know of that story, I guess.
I do not know if that story is true, but I hope it is. And even if so, it's a good final one-liner.
It's a great one-liner. Let's talk about
The actual
Warwick Davis.
film. Yeah, Warwick Davis. Warwick Davis is the MVP of this series for me. Like, even as we'll get into with the later films, even when the series really starts kind of going off the rails and getting weirder and more bizarre with each continuing installment, Warwick Davis is the shining star of these movies.
There's only one character that I liked more, and that was only like a bit part in part 3.
Yeah.
Art.
Oh god, we'll get to Art. But Warwick Davis's performance in these movies is what makes them, because he is so utterly committed to the bit that it does not matter what material you give him. He is just going to try his hardest to sell it. And he is so clearly having so much fun with all of these movies that I cannot help but really appreciate that kind of enthusiasm. He is, if you want to watch these movies, he is what kind of makes them. He is the reason why this exists as a franchise. It is like entirely running on his performance, in my opinion.
And I mean, I also like that in this movie, unlike the later movies, he's got consistent powers and weaknesses.
Oh god.
His weaknesses, I think, are pretty funny. One, if you put him in a crate and put one 4-leaf clover over it, all of a sudden he's just like, I can't tunnel out, I can't go anywhere. This is just, I'm stuck here for decades. Or however long he was stuck there. And
the
also,
powers of 4-leaf clovers are transmittable through wood.
if you throw shoes at him, he will clean them all. And I think that is a great weakness.
The shoes is great. The shoe running gag is one of my greatest disappointments with this franchise, because it is just this extremely specific mythological weakness that the series never really does much with. But it never really does much with any of these things, honestly. It is pretty much a situation where, as we will find out later, they just do not have continuity between these movies, but that is a problem for the later films.
Well, yeah, but in this movie, it's Leprechaun. He can kind of teleport. He can... he's really hard to kill. He's strong. He can mimic voices.
Yeah.
All he wants is his gold, and if you gave him his gold, he might leave you alone. No one's really tried that, to be honest.
Yeah, nobody has ever just tried... very few people have actually just tried just straight up giving him his gold in this series.
Like, yeah, usually there's an excuse, like they don't know where it is or something, but I don't know. But yeah, if you give him his gold, maybe he won't kill you. I mean, that's what he says.
Yeah.
I mean,
there is one running gag.
Yeah.
There is one running gag that keeps coming up through all these movies, and I don't know why it's the one they fixate on, but it is the one of the leprechaun losing an eye and having to find a replacement.
Did he lose
It
an eye
appears
in
in
this one?
so many
Yes, he
movies.
did.
Yes,
did lose
he
an eye,
loses an
right.
eye in this one. I know for sure he loses an eye in 5. I think he does in 6. I'm pretty sure he does in 8. He doesn't do it in 7. We'll get to 7.
I mean, yeah. What else is there to say? So about the characters, the rest of the characters. Jennifer Aniston, I didn't mind her.
Yeah, she's fine. She's good.
She's good in it.
She's good enough.
She's got the asshole love interest who.
She's got the incel love interest.
the incel love interest.
Yeah.
And then there's the duo of Ozzy and Alex. Ozzy is like one of my favorites.
Ozzy is the best part of this series for me outside of Warwick Davis. Because he feels very weirdly out of place in the series for me, because his B-plot is basically of mice and men. His plot with Alex is just a child-friendly slapstick comedy version of mice and men, and it is bizarre to me because it is playing up like, okay, Ozzy's like not very smart. Alex wants to use the gold to get the leprechaun's gold to get Ozzy an operation to make him smarter, so it might actually also be flowers for Algernon? I'm very confused.
I really like the idea of John Steinbeck's Leprechaun.
John Steinbeck's Leprechaun. Just these very melancholy, this very melancholy poetic language, this very, hard luck Grapes of Wrath style story of people on the road, and then there's just a killer leprechaun in it.
Instead of I want to tame the rabbits, it's like, I want me gold.
Oh my god. Okay, so are we having the leprechaun are we just having the leprechaun playing a role in a Steinbeck adaptation, or is it just a regular Steinbeck, but we also have the killer leprechaun in there?
Represents society, obviously. He represents the society that they...
So he's the villain, is what you're saying.
Who's the guy of Mice and Men who... who was like the main bad guy. I forget his name, but
It is God, I am forgetting. There goes my. It is
McReady.
Curly.
Yeah. No, but this of Mice and Men, this is not. I do like this is one of the few movies that is contained to mostly. They leave the farm.
They
but
do
it's
leave the farm,
mostly
yeah.
one location, where it's kept like they're trapped. How do you get out of this area? While it's picking them off, or it's like very slowly. He doesn't really.
He doesn't kill a lot of people in
No,
this
he
one.
kills I think 4. There was like the pogo stick one is the famous one.
There's one like really, really well developed kill scene in this. There is like a very specific, very classical slasher kind of kill scene where the leprechaun kills a man at a pawn shop who has some of his gold by repeatedly jumping on his chest with a pogo stick until it cuts him.
I'm gonna say that's one of the best in the series. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
that is a
horrifying.
very creative, very, very upset, actually like kind of generally upsetting and gory kill. And then the rest of them, he just kind of snaps people's necks.
Yeah, I mean, that's the one they put the most like make the audience cringe and scream into.
Yeah. There's one really good kill, and then the rest are kind of just, oh, I guess he just killed them.
We get to see Warwick Davis as a leprechaun be pulled over by a cop, right?
I believe we do, yes. And later on, we get to hear him pretend to be a cop.
Oh, part 5.
Oh,
Right.
God, we'll get to that. We'll get to that.
No, so this is a pretty standard one of Leprechaun. Like, this is the one that, to me, when I think of Leprechaun, this is the movie I immediately think of. Yeah, I think this is just one of the most pure ones, just like a goofy kids movie that forgot to be a kids movie.
Yeah. I remember you described it as kind of killer clowns from outer space with less of a budget, and I kind of think that makes sense. It kind of has that same vibe as Killer Clowns from Outer Space, where it's like, it is not taking itself seriously at all. It is this very, like, almost childish kind of horror comedy. I mean, I don't think it has, like, the same kind of visual creativity as Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Nowhere near.
It doesn't go as far with its own premise as that movie does, but I think there's, like, a certain weird kind, and I don't think it's, like, a great movie, but I think there's, like, a sort of charm to it.
It balances its sincerity pretty well.
It's like, it knows what it is. It's a very silly movie about killer leprechaun, and it's not really trying to be much else, and it kind of is just, its attitude towards the audience is just sit back, enjoy the ride.
Yeah, and it does have its normal, slasher slog that a lot of these things have.
Yeah, there's that middle section where kind of not much is happening.
But would you recommend this, Quinn?
If you're like looking for that, if you're into that kind of like late 80s goofball, I guess later period Nightmare on Elm Street sort of feel with a slasher, it's fun. I probably would. It's a decently entertaining enough horror movie. I don't think it's a great film again, but I think it does what it wants to do pretty well.
I think this movie, here's who I recommend it for. I respect this movie. I enjoy it. I would recommend this as if you have a bunch of friends who like B movies and you're having a B movie night. This is like the first thing you put on while people are starting to gather in.
That is a good point.
You get like you laugh. You might get distracted on your phone during the middle, and then you come back in. I would recommend this to not my parents, is who I would not recommend this to.
Yeah.
Maybe some friends of mine I'd recommend it to. It's a niche market for Leprechaun.
Yes. It is a very niche.
But
I think you put it very well there.
Compared to the rest of them, I would definitely recommend this over some of the later ones.
I mean, we could just be recommending it because we've seen what happens to this series later on, and it's just like, actually in retrospect, maybe this wasn't that bad. Maybe this is pretty good, actually.
No, this is up there with one of my favorites. It's top 3 probably. We'll get to our ranking later, but this is probably top 3 Leprechauns for me.
All right. Now, before we move on, I have a quick thing to touch upon that I found while doing some research for this episode, and it is the marketing plans for Leprechaun. Because Trimark marketed the living shit out of this movie, and there are some wonderful tie-ins. Now, this is from a 1993 article in Entertainment Weekly, and I have now learned about some of the promotional materials for Leprechaun, which include, first, there is a Leprechaun video board game. I have not been able to find any evidence of what this looks like, how it plays. I do not know what this is. But the next two are much funnier. First is that the National Basketball Association, and yes, that is the NBA, sponsored something called Leprechaun Nights in promotion of this movie. And again, I cannot find footage of these Leprechaun Nights. I do not know what they are. I presume they involve the Boston Celtics, but I do not have any evidence of this. Even more entertainingly, though, is that there was a cross-promotion for this movie with the American Stock Exchange, in which Warwick Davis rung the opening bell in costume as Leprechaun. And I am just going to put this out there to all of our listeners. If you have evidence of the Leprechaun video board game, of the NBA's Leprechaun Nights, or Warwick Davis ringing the opening bell at the American Stock Exchange, please send it to us. I need proof that these things existed, because they are amusing to me, and I want to know they are real.
Yes. I did not know any of that. That's wild.
I kept that from him specifically before we were recording, so I could just spring it on him out of the blue.
I need a picture
of it worked.
Warwick Davis in costume ringing the bell.
We need pictures of Warwick Davis at the Stock Exchange. Comment on the YouTube video. Find us. We'll probably have a Twitter. Find us on there.
Oh, okay. Right before we move on to the next movie, just when I was talking about the Lucky Charms cereal, I found it on IMDb trivia, so you know it's true.
It's gotta be true.
215 people out of 217 found it interesting, and
215 people can't be wrong.
No, this is like the 9 out of 10 dentists. Apparently General Mills gave them permission, but they were so upset when they saw the finished film that they revoked their permission. The filmmakers reshot the scene, replacing the brand name with an obvious spoof. They also changed the kid's line at the end from "Your luck just ran out" to "Fuck you, Lucky Charms."
Oh my god, so they just went back and reshot it just to screw with them. That's wonderful.
That's petty, and I love
That's
it.
the kind of beautiful pettiness that we need more of in the film industry. And with that, I think we're ready to move on to Leprechaun 2, released 1 year later, directed by Rodman Flender.
Yes, Rodman Flender, who did 2 episodes of The Office, including the episode where Dwight, the whale, where Dwight has to learn how to sell to women. And he also did some Ugly Betty, I think? Maybe not.
Apparently he did 1 episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Really?
Yes.
Well, he's a TV director, but this...
Like Mark Jones.
Yeah. When I think of this movie, the first thing I always think of is just the Clint Howard cameo. I don't know why, I just love seeing Clint Howard and stuff. Watching him show up, the other Howard brother. This movie is about...
More importantly, about the Clint Howard cameo, it is not just Clint Howard. It is Clint Howard, and as Clint Howard's girlfriend in the scene, Kimmy Robertson, otherwise known as Lucy Moran from Twin Peaks.
Yeah, it's got... Isn't there, like, more Twin Peaks connections in later movies?
I cannot remember if there are more Twin Peaks connections, but the fact that there even is a pretty direct Leprechaun Twin Peaks connection is just fascinating to me.
Well, Leprechaun 2 is about... I mean, what isn't it about? This one, they move past the just wanting his gold, and they bring it to now Leprechaun wants love.
And also his gold.
So, there's now 2 MacGuffins. So at the beginning of the movie, we see the one last scene for a while where he's obsessed with shoes. Because at the very beginning, you see a slave of his, like this old guy, this Irish guy, and he's like, your shoes are... He's the guy's trying to escape the leprechaun. The leprechaun shows up, he tries to dust his shoes, and that's the last we see of his shoe fetish for a while, which was very disappointing, but it was nice that they at least acknowledge it. And so, in this world, there are new rules. The leprechaun will make you sneeze 3 times, I believe.
If you are a beautiful woman. Only if you are a beautiful woman.
Once you sneeze 3 times, unless someone says, God bless you, you will be turned into the leprechaun's bride.
No, you won't be turned. The leprechaun will just claim you as his bride. It's not even said that it's a mystical thing. It's just presumably a rule of leprechaun etiquette.
Right. No, this whole sneezing concept, no other movie. It's its own thing. I love it. Also, his new weakness, iron. I think this is like the only other one. There's one other that
There's one other that has iron.
Right. And so basically, he tells this slave guy, and he's like, "Hey, I'll let you go, but I'm gonna make your daughter sneeze 3 times, and then she'll love me." And then he says, "God bless you." And then the leprechaun's like, "Oh, I'm angry." He kills the guy, and then hundreds of years later, he now wants another bride, and now we're in present day St. Patrick's Day, Los Angeles, 1994. And he sets his eyes on a girl named Bridget, who is dating our lead protagonist, whose name is as follows. Cody is, I like Cody as a protagonist. I really liked his uncle. He has an uncle named Morty. They run a
scam tour. They run a tour guide scam. It is okay, according to the Wikipedia, it is a dark side tour, a scam that drives tourists to alleged resting places of celebrities. And this is where we get those aforementioned Clint Howard and Kimmy Robertson cameos. Which is funny because this is after Twin Peaks. So this is a point where
before Ice Cream Man.
Before Ice Cream Man, yes.
Yeah, so they just drive people around LA and say, "Hey, this place someone died in," and then left. And it's actually, I think all that stuff is really funny to me. It's just like them trying to run this scam and no one's buying it. They're just in the car like, "Can we leave now?" And then they got to go to the what happens in this? Like this movie was wild. So like he's got a rival. He's got a rival who's working at it was like a go-kart place.
It was a go-kart place, yes, because that comes up later. So there's a romantic rival that works at this go-kart place. The leprechaun decides to kidnap Bridget, Cody's girlfriend, because she doesn't get told "bless you" after she sneezes 3 times.
And so Morty and Cody work together.
But also the leprechaun is trying to frame Cody for murder. So
right.
This is also a Hitchcock plot.
Well, I think this one has one of the stronger characters in it. You got Warwick Davis. Cody's a fun, kind of like weird teenager who just doesn't know what he's doing. He's trying to run this scam with Morty, who's he's just Rick, from Rick and Morty, but he's Morty. His name is Morty. He's a drunk. He's the worst. We love him. Tony Cox also makes an appearance in this movie, and I don't know what he was doing. He shows up in a bar, looks at Cody, and just like offers him a chocolate coin, smiles at him creepily, and then walks away. And is like never seen. He's seen like later, cheering on the leprechaun in
a drinking contest, which is my favorite scene in this whole movie.
So there were actually two great leprechaun quotes that two of my favorite leprechaun quotes. Leprechaun rhymes in a lot of his movies.
This is the thing. Let me talk about this because this thing drives me up a wall. The leprechaun rhymes in some of these movies, but he does not consistently rhyme in all of them. And I originally thought it was a pattern where it's like, oh, every odd film in the series, he rhymes. But no, there is no consistent pattern to whether the leprechaun is going to rhyme or not, and it drives me insane. I couldn't even get a consistent pattern out of it. That hurts me.
I love the line. He says, "I know this line is getting old, but believe me, son, I want me gold." And I'm just like, I just love the most of Warwick Davis's lines in these movies are just, "I want me gold, where is me gold?" And I just love that they acknowledge in part 2, this line is getting old.
And then they kept doing it.
They just kept doing it, and it is great. I do enjoy this movie. I don't think it's better than part 1. It's got some pretty creative, kill scenes. You got this movie has, we saw Leprechaun drive in part 1. This time he gets like a super go-kart, like Mad Max.
We saw the Leprechaun drive a lot in part 1. These movies have a lot of vehicle chase scenes for some reason.
Oh, and this also adds a new what's it called? Piece of lore. If you have a piece of the Leprechaun's gold, he can't kill you as long as you have it. And if you capture him, you get one wish. The wish thing comes back in part 3 in a different way, though, using the coin. It's all a mess.
Also, his weakness in this is iron.
Iron, yeah.
And also, he can he can't shapeshift himself, but he can make other things shapeshift. So, like, in one of the nastiest kills in the whole movie, he shapeshifts a lawnmower to look like Bridget, so Cody's romantic rival tries to kiss her and then just sticks his face into a lawnmower.
It's class. Yeah, I mean, at least...
The kills in this are pretty intense, actually. There's some pretty messed up scenes in this. There's one scene involving Morty where he makes a wish for the Leprechaun's gold and he makes it appear inside his stomach, and it is absolutely nasty.
I really liked Morty, and that is the second saddest death in the
second
series.
Saddest death. We will get to the saddest later.
But no, that scene is legitimately disturbing, and then Leprechaun like frames him, but that goes nowhere.
Yeah, nothing comes out of the Hitchcock plot in this.
I love
because he immediately kills the security guard with a go-kart.
So now we find out in this movie. We also find out Leprechaun's got a lair.
Yes, he does.
And this
he
lair,
does not have one.
It's in a tree or something. It's like in a tree. And the first thing he does, he goes out. He finds like this homeless guy who's drinking a bottle of whiskey, and then he drinks it. Like I remember he like spits it out, and he says, "The only whiskey is Irish whiskey," and then like bites the guy's gold ring off his finger.
No, it's the gold tooth. It was the gold tooth out of his mouth.
Right.
Which he does again in another film.
Right, part 6, right? Yeah.
7. No, 6. 6 actually. 6. No, 7. 7 is.
And then you like later see him in a police station. And he's like, he's like drunk. He's like, there was a leprechaun. And no one believes him, and it's like, haha, because the leprechaun is real. Comic gold. The series hasn't gone full like trying to be funny. They're more just trying to be campy and goofy. But
yeah.
They're not ha-ha laughs. I love the scene. Okay, one of my favorite scenes in the series is Morty to help Cody and to stop the leprechaun. He challenges him to a drinking contest, to which Leprechaun says, "Drink what you must, drink what you're able. When you're drinking with me, you'll be under the table." Why does my Leprechaun impression sounds like I don't know, like the SpongeBob mocking meme? But then we get
drinking contest.
A drinking contest where they actually, it's very rare in these movies, but they actually set this up because Morty was actually drinking like soda that he, earlier in the movie, they gave him like cola and said it's like rum or something, and that's what he drinks so to not actually get drunk against the leprechaun. They actually set up how he's going to beat the leprechaun in this.
Yeah.
And then you got a leprechaun trying to like levitate cigarette what's it called, ashtrays, throw it at him, and he misses, and it's
drunken Warwick Davis in this movie is delightful.
And Tony Cox is like rooting for him. It's
the drinking game scene is
it's hilarious to me.
It's the best scene in this movie. It might be one of the best scenes in the whole Leprechaun franchise. It is I almost wonder if I kind of like this film more than the first one, because I think the first one has its charm to it, but this kind of embraces that campy feel wholeheartedly. There's a lot more like very creative kills to it. It's got some very good like comedic moments. I almost kind of wonder if I think this is slightly better than the original.
Yeah, they're both not good, but I would say I think about this movie more than part 1.
Yeah, part 1's more polished. This is a lot rougher, but I also think it's kind of goes a little more creative than part 1 in a lot of places.
Part 1, yeah, in the middle of the night I'll wake up and say, hey, Leprechaun 2 was a movie, and then go back to sleep, whereas, Leprechaun 1 maybe every, not as often. This was, fun fact, the last to get a theatrical release.
Yeah. So we're into the wasteland of direct-to-video from here on out.
But, well, actually there was one more that got a theatrical release. Part 7 got a theatrical, I believe, some places.
How?
WWE Studios.
I know, but also how? Look, we'll get to Leprechaun Origins. I keep saying that. We'll get to it.
Yeah, but eventually, yeah, the movie's climax is like Cody's got to go save Bridget in the tree dungeon. They get lost in a maze, and then Leprechaun turns out to be bald.
And then Cody stabs him with iron, and he explodes.
Right, and remember iron. Actually, you could forget about iron because it's not important for other movies.
It's not going to come up until way later, so you can just forget about the iron for now.
And if you're trying to find a continuity between the first and the second, how did Leprechaun get out of get out from the first one? I don't know how we're spoiling these, but how is he back in part 2? He's at his dungeon. He's at the dungeon.
Honestly, if you're trying to find a continuity between all of these movies, don't.
If you're looking for a point, you probably missed it.
I don't know if there is one.
There was never one in the first place. All right.
And speaking of no point, Leprechaun 3.
1996?
1995.
Five.
Before we say anything else, this one is directed by Brian Trenchard-Smith, who is probably like the most high-profile filmmaker this series has. Now, like, Brian Trenchard-Smith isn't like a household name, but he's more well-known as kind of one of these figures that emerged out of Australian grindhouse cinema in the 1970s and 1980s. He's recognized for a lot of like cult favorite Australian action and horror and sci-fi movies, stuff like Turkey Shoot and The Man from Hong Kong. And for me, most notably, he is the director of Dead End Drive-In, which is one of my all-time favorite post-apocalyptic movies. That is this almost Mad Max ripoff that ends up being more this like political commentary on 1980s Australian nationalism that has a great final car chase scene and really good world building, and it's kind of this like very low-key, almost drama-ish sci-fi film, and it's awesome. And I really like Brian Trenchard-Smith, so I was most excited for 3 and 4. Unfortunately, as you will tell for us, Max, this is the point where the series starts to go a bit loopy.
Well, so I agree. Dead End Drive-In is awesome.
Yes.
Great movie. This is actually, part 3 is a fan favorite. A lot of people, especially people I've seen on the internet and whatnot, this is one of their favorites, and I do not get it. I like that they're actually throwing in jokes now. They now understand, hey, we could be funny. Warwick Davis is a naturally funny guy. But there's nothing happens in this movie for like the first half, and then stuff happens, and it's just like robots suddenly and TV infomercials are evil, and
For context, the Wikipedia summary for Leprechaun 1 is about 5 paragraphs. The Wikipedia summary for Leprechaun 2 is about 7 or 8 paragraphs. The Wikipedia summary for Leprechaun 3 is 3 sentences. It is, the leprechaun has been turned into a statue by a magic medallion, which actually does come up again in part 5. So that's some level of continuity, so possibly 3 and 5, but actually no, not the ending of 3. So he's in Las Vegas, he's sold to a pawn shop, and then the medallion gets taken off of him, and he's just wreaking havoc in Las Vegas. And meanwhile, there's a college student with a gambling addiction, and his girlfriend who works at a casino, and...
No, it wasn't his girlfriend, it was just a girl he, picked up or something.
It was Wikipedia says it's his girlfriend. I think Wikipedia's wrong on this, because it's just, a random girl he met.
They started dating, after the movie or something.
They start dating,
This is the crazy part.
Yeah.
The guy who plays this college kid, guy going to college, the actor later goes on to write Flight and Kong Skull Island. He co-wrote those, and I think that is hilarious because I love those movies. Well, I really like those movies.
He was also in Pumpkinhead 2 Blood Wings.
Oh, that's Pumpkinhead 1.
And Witchboard 2 The Devil's Doorway. So he just kept showing up in horror sequels for some reason.
I mean, yeah, I saw Pumpkinhead 2 last year, and I was disappointed because I love Pumpkinhead 1.
We'll get to that eventually.
Pumpkinhead's great. But this is just a guy is driving through Vegas to go to college. He meets a girl. He gambles. He finds a coin, and he can make a wish with the coin. But now the leprechaun wants his gold.
The leprechaun wants his gold again. But also, if you have his gold, you get to have a wish granted. But then the leprechaun can twist that wish to make it horrible on you. So if let's say you wish for beauty like a character does in this film, the leprechaun can make your breast implants just explode and just blow you up until you explode from the inside. Look, what I'm trying to say here is that Leprechaun 3 has some very bizarre parallels to Wonder Woman 84, and I do not know how I feel about that.
Well, see, it's a monkey's paw thing, except when the main character, what was his name again?
Scott.
When Scott wishes he loses all of his money at first gambling. He loses all of the money his parents gave him for college, and then he finds a coin. He wishes he was back at the casino winning, and then he just wins all this money. And the only bad thing to happen from that really
is that the leprechaun kills a lot of other people.
It's that now the head of the casino now is trying to steal the money from him, but that's not really the coin's fault. That's just.
And then the head of the casino wishes Scott's quote-unquote girlfriend was in love with him, but then the leprechaun disguises himself as her and then kills it. look, this one's a bit of a mess.
A fan favorite character, another one, Fazio the Magician, if you remember him, who...
I barely do.
Oh, he was the guy who got the best death scene in the movie where he was sawed in half by the
Oh yeah,
leprechaun.
that was actually pretty good.
No, he was just like the eccentric magician that was just kind of a terrible person. He wanted to like be a big famous magician, and I remember the part where he had like a rabbit. He tells Warwick Davis, he's like, watch this rabbit disappear. He puts a black cloak in front of it, takes it out, and then the leprechaun uses his magic, so now there's leprechaun poop in his hands. So objectively funny, because leprechaun poop is the peak of comedy. But yeah, basically everyone's now fighting to get these coins.
That grant wishes.
That grants wishes. Fun fact though, I just saw this. Apparently the coins have the picture of Charles III of Spain on them. I just wanted to say that because in a later movie, it's just the leprechaun's face instead, and I just think that's a funny change.
Look, the leprechaun carries different kinds of currency, okay?
I guess.
He's prepared for whatever market he needs to go into.
Yeah, but there are a lot of characters in this movie. Most of them are just them wanting things. There's like, I want to be young and beautiful again, from a woman who's like, she does not. I mean, she looks fine. She doesn't. This is not like someone.
That
who
woman is
could
literally
wish.
Caroline Williams from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Yeah, I mean,
I think you look fine. You were in a sequel to Texas Chainsaw. I think you're fine.
You got Fazio, who wants to be a famous magician. You got the head of the casino, who wants Bridget. Not Bridget Blood. That was part 2. She wants Scott's not girlfriend.
Scott's not girlfriend.
And then you got Scott, who wants money. He wants money. And then there's also the pawn shop owner who doesn't really want anything, but that leads into the weirdness of the first half of this movie where you're just watching two completely different movies. Because there is the opening 30 minutes of this film. Half of it is just the leprechaun psychologically torturing this pawn shop owner, and the other half is just a movie about Scott losing at poker. So basically you're watching a leprechaun movie that's like what happened if a leprechaun sequel kind of stumbled face first into like a direct-to-video Rounders sequel. And that scene, though, could have been intense, except for the fact that why does this pawn shop owner, like, so the leprechaun at this point ate his toe off or something and, like, bit his ear. The guy's like, leprechaun means business. But then he's like, oh, no, I want my gold. So he spends all this time trying to track down the leprechaun and kill him in his basement or the back of the store. He could have just left. He would have been fine. And now we get a new leprechaun power. He can alter reality because he takes a Cupid statue and he makes it so that his secret statue can now release the arrow and it actually shoots the guy.
At this point in this film, the rules have just suddenly gone to, okay, the leprechaun has some powers in 1. In 2, it's the leprechaun has more powers. In 3, the leprechaun can do anything.
He's Thanos.
He has complete control over reality.
Leprechaun. He turns Scott partially into a leprechaun.
Oh, I completely forgot about Scott slowly turning into a leprechaun. How did I forget so much about this movie? This movie is insane.
If you get bitten by the leprechaun, and his blood also mixes with yours. So it's got to be a very specific set of circumstances.
So it is both vampire and werewolf.
Right. So it has to bite you, but it also has to bleed on you. And then you just slowly start getting really into potatoes.
And you slowly begin turning into a leprechaun.
He starts speaking
So there are were-leprechauns in this movie.
And once this movie gets going, like this has some weird kills. They got like a weird robot thing. This is where he
builds a robot. He builds a murder robot that electrocutes someone, and then he makes someone's breast implants explode, and then he cuts a man in half.
And this is also the one where he becomes Freddy Krueger because he starts doing like when he's trying to have sex with not Scott's girlfriend, which you find out her real name. We see on the TV, the leprechaun makes like an infomercial while it's playing where he's just like talking about, I don't remember, it's like killing the guy. It's like,
abstinence, I think. He was talking about abstinence.
I love it. This is and then she snaps out of the leprechaun's curse and leaves angry and scared. And then Leprechaun kills him. But this also, in this scene, we see my favorite character of the series, who I call the Leprechaun universe's Bernie Sanders and friend. And it's just these two like mob guys. named Art and something, and they're just like, they have great chemistry with each other, and they're just so fun to watch.
They should have been the protagonists.
I call him Bernie Sanders just because he has white hair. He says, and I quote, let me see if I can find he says, what do I want? I want brown hair, I want healthcare for all Americans, and I want the Mets to get their shit together. The Mets being a New York team where Bernie Sanders, I believe, was born. So I really think this guy is just alternate universe Bernie Sanders, and he's got a pretty classic one-liner before he is killed by the Leprechaun. So he's honestly a super fun character. I really liked him, and I wish he was the main character.
Yeah. Anyways, thoughts on this film?
Do I recommend it? I mean, if you're going by mob rule of like what everyone else is saying, yes, it's the best, one of the best of the series. But I find it just a little tedious. Not enough happens at the beginning.
Yeah, it's got a slow start.
This is definitely one of those things where you can chop out so much fat and make a 20-minute short that I would love. But there's just so much fat in it. Just make the art film. Just make Art the main character. Just all of his scenes.
Yeah. I agree with you on a lot of that. I kind of do enjoy this one once it gets going. Once it hits its groove, it's got some very solid gags. It's got some of the more bizarre and creative death scenes in it, and Brian Trenchard-Smith is at least trying with this one.
Yeah, and he goes in the right direction with the comedy.
Yeah, but I think it's just a little too slow to start. Is kind of my issue with it. It takes just too long to really get into gear.
I think the concept is genius, though. Leprechaun going to Vegas is like a fantastic idea. It's got also probably like my favorite poster of the movies, or one of them. One of my favorite, like maybe the first post movies got a simple poster I like, but no. So yeah, it's Brian Trenchard-Smith is a great director. Love Dead End Drive-In. This is just not my favorite. Now we oh god.
Yeah. Oh god, I just saw what's up next. It is time.
Every great horror series has to eventually go here.
And this is one of the few that genuinely does. It is time for Leprechaun 4 in space. This is again directed by Brian Trenchard-Smith, and oh god, where do I even begin with this one? So, as you can tell, this is in space. It is in the deep future. The Leprechaun, this time around, he wants a bride, so he is courting a space princess, who he plans to kill, but she also plans to kill him because she's also kind of a psychopath, so I guess they're kind of perfect for each other. Because the Leprechaun wants to marry rich, but he also still wants his gold. And he's also messing with a mining operation. So, some space marines are sent in to kill the Leprechaun, which they do, but then the Leprechaun comes back in a way that we will eventually discuss, because I don't feel like discussing it right now, and he wreaks havoc on the ship because, Max, why did they... Does he want his gold in this one? He kind of wants his gold, but he kind of wants the princess, but he also just kind of wants to screw with these people. He kind of has three motivations in this movie, but also has no motivations.
This is like the only movie, one of the only ones in the series where it really feels like the characters can't get out unless they do something, like actively fight against it or try to escape, whereas the other movies, it's a lot of it can just be like, give him the gold. What are you doing?
I mean, it is because they're in space. They're literally just floating in space, so it's very hard to escape from that.
This is low-budget aliens.
This is low-budget aliens, but it's also kind of every single sci-fi franchise at once. Because literally very early into this, we get Space Marines, but we also get kind of like space royalties, kind of John Carter of Mars stuff. But then the Leprechaun kills a guy with a lightsaber, and it's like, oh, this is just every single sci-fi franchise at the same time. But more than anything else, it is a film about a
evil Spider-Man.
It is a... We'll get to the spider. We'll get to the spider later. Okay, Max, what I'm trying to say is this is a film about a group of extremely theocratic space marines operating presumably under this complicated interstellar royalty system, trying to hunt this ancient monster from beyond the veil with these eldritch powers. What I'm trying to say is that this movie is Warhammer 40K. This is somehow Warhammer 40k, but also every single sci-fi franchise on the face of the earth, and it's also kind of a mess.
If Event Horizon is the prequel to Warhammer,
Event Horizon is the prequel to War.
meaning it's the same continuity as Leprechaun.
This
4.
comes before. This obviously comes before Warhammer. This is 2096, so I believe this comes before Event Horizon. This definitely comes before Warhammer. Look, the Leprechaun timeline is convoluted enough as it is. I'm not bringing other franchises into it.
But if you say that this is the worst movie in the franchise or the best, you are right.
It occupies all points on the Leprechaun spectrum because this movie is bonkers. It is a mess. It is very enjoyable, but I do not think it is a good movie, but it also kind of is.
To quote a wise man, I know director or writers who use subtlety, and they're all cowards. This movie swings for the fences, lets go of the baseball bat, it goes flying, hits someone in the crowd, they're crying, blood everywhere, it's awful.
This movie tries a lot of things. At one point, this movie tries to do the alien chestburster scene, but instead it just the leprechaun turns himself into liquid. He climbs up a mad stream of pee as he is peeing on the leprechaun's corpse, and then it bursts out of his penis.
So if you've seen Friday the 13th, and it's very much Friday the 13th part, Jason Goes to Hell, they have a similar opening where they kill the big baddie right away, and then it possesses someone.
It doesn't possess him. It grows inside him, and then comes out his crotch.
What does he have like a one-liner? He probably has a one-liner. He's got.
I don't think he has a one-liner.
This is
not
the only time he bursts out of someone in this movie, in this series.
Yeah, it happens. It happens other times.
I loved a giant Warwick Davis as like a bad
the
guy.
end of this movie involves a giant Warwick Davis, just clearly green screened in, bumbling around a warehouse full of crates.
I just realized, didn't they have a scene where there's like the big angry general who has like half his head is a dome, and you realize eventually he's a cyborg. Doesn't he like put on a dress?
Yes, the leprechaun like mind controls him to make him put on a dress and then act like a gay stereotype. That's foreshadowing for 5. That's foreshadowing for what's going to happen in 5.
4 and 5 do not really.
4 and 5 are not exactly PC.
Basically, the being trans is a punchline in those movies.
We'll get to that. We're gonna get to that. We will get to that.
But yeah, he just has him start dancing, and then there's another guy.
And then also beating them up.
And then there's the secret bad guy in this, because if you think the Leprechaun's the big bad guy, it's actually a guy who...
It is Dr. Mittenhand, who is seems like a very explicit...
He's Dr. Strangelove.
He's Dr. Strangelove, but he's also Davros from Doctor Who, so that's another sci-fi franchise they're ripping off. Homaging. That is true. But then, the Leprechaun and his bride inject him with spider, scorpion, tarantula DNA, and he just turns into a giant monster. So they're also ripping off The Fly.
And something that's legitimately uncomfortable, and if that was the movie, if the movie was just about Mitten Spider, I would have actually been a little scared. I'm gonna be honest.
There is a perfectly good, perfectly acceptable mid-80s Fly knockoff in this movie trying to get out, but it also has to compete with Warwick Davis. That is the kind of movie we are dealing with here. It is a complete chaos. It is just Brian Trenchard-Smith throwing up his hands, saying, fuck it, and then I like to think of this movie as its writing process is basically the Gremlins 2 sketch from Key and Peele, where it's just one guy going around the room asking everybody, what do you want to put in the movie, regardless of whether it makes sense or not, and then saying, yeah, we're going to put it in the movie, and then all of it's in the movie. Can't even begin to describe all the things that happen in this film.
Is there an amulet that turns him into stone in this movie?
No, but there's a shrink ray.
Is there an iron? Does iron hurt him in this movie?
No, he gets flushed out in airlock.
Coins that make you wish? No.
No, he explodes when he's flushed out in airlock in space.
Continuity is like his powers and weaknesses are not expanded upon, or I don't know.
There's some wonderful effects in this film too.
Yeah, the movie ends with Warwick Davis's giant hand flipping them off, and then the main character, saying, "Yeah, right back to you." or right
I
back
mean,
at
it's
you.
probably directed at the audience. Let's be honest. This movie is just, like you said, this is kind of simultaneously the best and the worst film in the franchise. They are giving it their all. They probably should not have.
You know, honestly, so in film school, if more students wrote stuff like this, I would have been so happy and not like, because we had to read a lot of scripts from students, you know, as in our class. And if more kids were like, all of a sudden, Warwick Davis shows up as a giant and he starts trying to step on his bride-to-be, but then he gets sucked out of an airlock and his severed hand flips you off, I'd be like, yes, that's what
And
I
he
want to
just
see.
bursts out of someone's dick.
And
He cuts someone in half with a lightsaber.
Yeah, they were. It was just a lightsaber. It was not like a lightsaber.
It wasn't like it was literally a lightsaber.
It was green. It was Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. In fact, it's continuity. It's with Star Wars.
It is a completely chaotic film. I don't think it is a great film. I think it is a mess. I enjoyed it. This is some of the most fun I had with any of these movies. Just staring at the screen in shock, seeing whatever they are going to try next. It feels like a film that was made on a dare, and I say that in the kindest way possible.
And so, you would recommend it?
Absolutely. This is like, if you're looking for like a B movie night, like for a night where you just want to sit down and put something completely ridiculous on and lose your mind laughing at it, this is an excellent choice. This is a film that is just so silly and over the top and completely ridiculous that you cannot take it seriously at all, and I love it. It is very fun. It is very fun.
You cannot say... I can't say that this is so bad it's good, because it's just so self-aware. And
is it?
I think so. I mean, you
It
got a
might be.
lightsaber. You got him putting a scorpion and a tarantula into a blender, putting it with blue Gatorade, and then injecting it into a robot man.
Turning him into a giant spider monster.
You got cross-dressing robot dance sequences. You've got this.
Not all the humor aged well.
No, but this movie is basically the Stefan from SNL. If he made a movie like this, movie has everything. You got Warwick Davis being peed on and then bursting out of your penis. You've got giant Warwick Davis flipping you off as he's sucked out of an airlock. You got a scorpion spider robot man. It's got everything. It's got a little something for everyone.
Yeah, it's got
IGN 10 out of 10.
It's got a little something for everyone. It is either a great movie or a terrible movie, and it is probably both at the same time.
I like this more than 3, I will say.
Yeah, I think it is much more fun than 3, because it is just Brian Trenchard-Smith throwing everything at the walls and just seeing what sticks. And it's just clear that everybody involved in this is just having fun with it, and it is very enjoyable.
It's like if every time Brian Trenchard-Smith had an idea and the studio said, no, that's stupid, he said, now not only am I going to do it, I'm going to make it even worse and like weirder. And they're like, no.
Which is a wonderful way to approach a movie.
I love it. This movie, will I ever watch it again? I don't know. Am I glad I watched it? Probably not, but it's definitely...
I enjoyed it.
It's a fascinating piece of pop culture that every man, woman, and child should see. Not just the men, but the women and children too. That's my Star Wars prequel meme.
There we go. And with that,
we go to a very unlucky leprechaun. We already talked about that a bit.
We talked about that one. I can see you're trying to put the next one off as much as we can.
Well, I just think it's funny that it's not like Warwick Davis was evil leprechaun, nice leprechaun, and then back to evil leprechaun.
And then really hardcore on evil leprechaun. Because what we are about to get to is Leprechaun in the Hood. This movie.
Not to be confused with To the Hood.
Back to the Hood.
It's THE, this one.
It's The Hood. In The Hood with this one. This is a movie.
This movie opens up, right, with, like, reused footage, right?
This opens up with recycled footage from the opening of Leprechaun 1, and then it goes in some directions, and then it goes in some more directions, and then my brain explodes, because I do not know what the hell this movie was, but I'm going to try to explain what is happening. So this is possibly a sequel to 3, because it has the medallion thing from 3 where he's turned to stone, but this time the stone leprechaun ends up in the care of Ice-T as Mac Daddy Onassis, who is a Los Angeles area gangster rapper, who is using a magic flute that the leprechaun owns that entrances people or makes your music good. I don't know what it does, but whatever it does, it made him famous, and he is using it to become a famous rap star. But we also get Postmaster P, who is a family-friendly rapper who raps about positivity and doesn't like gangster rap, whose friends talk him into robbing Mac Daddy. In case you missed it, Max is just breaking down.
I just think it's...
This is going to be a recurring theme for this movie, because this movie is deranged. So they basically rob Mac Daddy. They find the flute, they take it for themselves, but they piss off Mac Daddy, but then they also release the Leprechaun, who wants his gold again. And so basically, they are on the run from both Ice-T and Warwick Davis, who both want to kill them for completely different reasons, but both also kind of want to kill each other.
So while this movie I was not as entertained by, I do think it has multiple rap musical breaks, featuring songs such as Do What You Gotta Do, Lep in the Hood, Come to Do No Good, and the Jesus Loves Me, This I Know rap.
There is a rap about Jesus where they start rapping profanely about Jesus, but then they use the magic flute to get a church congregation to join in with them, and then Coolio shows up for no reason
Does he
as himself,
nothing.
but only for one scene, and then he just leaves and he's gone.
Does he do anything in that scene? I think he
he just watches.
He doesn't even rap. He doesn't even rap with him.
He just watches. They just got Coolio to show up to set, watch one scene, film him in the background. They're like, "Yeah, you're done, Coolio. You're out for the day." This is the kind of movie you're in for. Leprechaun in the Hood is bizarre. I do not have any way to describe this movie. I think we can just talk about the things that happen in this movie. Our protagonist does family-friendly gangster rap, and the entire film seems to be a commentary on gangster rap, where it is believes that gangster rap is bad, because at the end of the film, there are sudden tone shifts here, where it goes from a wacky horror comedy to Postmaster P's friends dying horribly. And then in the end of the movie, he makes it, but he's also working as a gangster rapper, but he's being mentally controlled by the Leprechaun. So not only does this movie imply that this is the only film where the Leprechaun wins, but also that gangster rap is possibly created by the Leprechaun, because he says, "I taught him everything he knows." So gangster rap is evil and a product of leprechauns? Okay.
Yeah, well, everyone knows hip-hop has Irish roots. You know, it stems from Ireland.
Okay. The Leprechaun, in his first appearance in this movie, he says, free at last, thank God Almighty, free at last," which implies that he is aware of the Civil Rights Movement, which means he's aware of Jim Crow laws and Reconstruction, and most likely the transatlantic slave trade.
This movie starts off with Leprechaun stabbing a guy with with the comb in his afro.
Yes, that happens in this movie. He also has an invisible gun that he uses to shoot people.
Oh yeah, he just explodes your chest or something.
Because he has an invisible gun. And he also has zombie fly girls, who are not zombies. They are just women who are mind controlled. They are not zombies, which means that they are just being controlled by him via hypnosis, which means that either this movie is going for deep cut, full, actual Haitian zombification closer to actual voodoo, or this movie does not know what a zombie is. I do not know which is which. The Leprechaun commits multiple hate crimes in this movie. The Leprechaun commits actual hate crimes. He murders he murders a Chinese stereotype and then pickles all his parts in jars, and then he kills a transgender woman in mid-sex after calling her a fruit. And after the movie has constantly made fun of the fact that she is transgender. So the Leprechaun has canonically committed multiple hate crimes in this film, and also in that same scene, the protagonists use a heating pad and some lube to build a flaming mine that lights the Leprechaun on fire, which does not kill him, which means that the protagonists have violated the Geneva Convention for excessive force.
Wow. Yeah.
The MacGuffin in this is a joint that has 4-leaf clovers mixed in with the weed.
I just remember...
And it does nothing with it.
My favorite part of this movie is just Choi, the Asian stereotype character, doing the funky peasant, his dance move, because he wants to be in their music video. of Postmaster P's music video. That's my favorite part, just because I like the sound of the dance moves of the fucking peasant.
despair coming out of my mouth right now.
Yeah,
What is this
it's
movie?
very sad though, because that character, my boy, got pickled. Like he got put into pickle jars.
It's got a very the Chinese man and the transgender woman get probably the nastiest deaths in this movie.
Well, actually, the darkest one would be Postmaster P's friend with the. He
just gets shot, forced to commit suicide.
Yeah, it's dark,
and it's just such an out of nowhere tone shift where it's like it almost feels like they're specifically trying to do like Boys in the Hood, where it's like, okay, Leprechaun movie. The horrible realities of life for black people in the 90s where they might be killed in sudden acts of violence.
So, yes.
I don't understand this movie.
So what happens is Postmaster P or some, I think it was him, he gives the leprechaun back his flute. They're using the flute to further their rap career.
Yep.
And he gives it back. And now the leprechaun's just going to leave with his zombie fly girls.
Which are not zombies. They're not zombies.
And then then Postmaster P, for whatever reason, then I think he pulls out a gun or something, he threatens him. Warwick Davis would have left them alone, or Leprechaun would have left them alone, but he was just mad. He makes his friend kill himself. It just reminded me, I just had flashbacks to that scene from Walking Dead with Negan. That really dark scene. Great scene, but yeah, no, that was horrifying.
This movie is I do not say this lightly. This movie is a clusterfuck. This movie is... I do not think it is the worst movie in the Leprechaun franchise, but it is the most utterly baffling set of decisions. It is very much a movie about rap and life for black people in the 90s made by a white dude. It is very much that kind of movie, and it's also a movie where it does not seem like anybody knew what they were writing at any given time. So just everything happens, and there is no reason why anything happens, and it cannot penetrate my brain.
This movie also, Leprechaun loses an eye also in this one. Another Leprechaun eye loss. He's revealed to have arthritis, I found out. And also, this is technically one of the weakest, if not the weakest in the movies from a technical level, because they have scenes where characters are talking, but they're walking down the street, but the camera's stationary. They're walking towards the camera from way far away. They're taking too long, so they just fade to them closer. And they do that multiple times.
Fades to the same multiple times in this movie. They just fade to the same shot, but it's still not enough. So they have to fade to the same shot again.
You also get you see they film too high, so you see a bit of the edge of the set sometimes. This movie on a technical level is probably the weakest.
On a narrative level, it is a mess.
You know, at least Postmaster P is a memorable character. Same with his friend.
It's
Butch.
memorable. The movie's memorable. I don't think that makes it good.
No, but I do like Postmaster P and Butch and his other friend. Leprechaun was fun in it, but my goodness, this movie was, Ice-T was the evil. There was maybe one scene that made me laugh. I really like the part where they're hiding in the closet. They're on 3 we run, right? It's right, and then he turns to his friend. He's right. Turns to his friend, right, and then he turns to his friend, and it's Leprechaun. He goes right, and he looks like he's so happy to join the group.
They do that gag actually. I'd say they do that gag even better later on in the series. They do a similar gag in Returns that I think is even funnier.
I don't remember that. I probably will.
It's the one in the car. It's the one in the car.
Yeah, that was a good one. And this movie has got their callback scene. It's the look behind you, and then Ice-T's if I look behind you, that's stupid. I won't look behind myself. I'm not stupid. There's nothing behind me. You just want to escape.
And the Leprechaun's behind
does it
him.
too.
And then they call back to it in the finale, which is decent writing in a film where the writing is
No, just when I could see a callback in one of these movies, I'm hey!
I like how much you are clearly stretching here to try to say nice things about this movie that broke our brains when we were watching it so hard we actually had to pause it at multiple times just to try and figure out what the hell was going on.
This is the one we watched. We watched this on St. Patrick's Day.
We watched this on St. Patrick's Day. I did not have enough Guinness to get through this movie. I feel like I should have had more Guinness. Or just straight Irish whiskey. This is not a movie you should watch... Ever. This is not a movie you should watch. I was going to say this is not a movie you should watch sober, but But alcohol is not going to help you on this, because if you try to use alcohol in this movie, you're going to end up in the hospital for alcohol poisoning. So this is just not a movie you should ever watch if you value your sanity.
If watch it just for the part where Leprechaun does his credit rap. And I was wondering, so you said quickly, you mentioned, this is, I guess, a spoiler, but we can edit it out if we don't want it, but this is the only movie where the Leprechaun wins.
Yes.
And he raps at the end, and I was wondering if he won in the other movies, would we get other raps? Could we get, like, if he...
Did we miss the Leprechaun in space rap? Did we miss the Leprechaun in Vegas rap? Did we miss the Leprechaun Origins rap?
And so
how much did we miss?
I'm really excited for, like, to get my vaccine for COVID and whatnot, so I can, for karaoke bars that start opening up, so I can go with my friends and start going, Lep in the hood, come to do no good. Lep in the hood, come to do no good. I come from the land of the Irish Spring. I don't know the lyrics all.
That was one of them. I remember that was one of them.
Yeah, but no, the Postmaster P got his rap career going, but he's now possessed. He's now a zombie fly girl.
He's possibly possessed by the Leprechaun, or hypnotized by him. Look, we don't know what happened in this movie. I'd say you're gonna have to figure this one out for yourselves, but no, you do not need to figure this one out for yourselves.
This one is the flute never comes back. This is definitely one. I mean, all of them. You don't need to watch any of these in any order. Like, they're all, except for like one, they're all standalones. And even the one that is like a direct sequel can be watched on its own. But yeah, would you recommend 5? You said no, and no. I'll say, yeah, I don't think I very few people I'd recommend it to. Okay, now we are on to Leprechaun 6, Back to the Hood,
and also 2 is the number 2.
The 2 is the number 2, so back, so yeah, Leprechaun's back to the Hood, but he never really left. Because the end of the 5th movie, he's still in the Hood. Well, he's in the Hood, not in the Hood. Anyway,
So either he has never been to the Hood, or he never left. In either case, the title does not make any sense.
This is a comparatively less eccentric movie, I think, than everything post 2.
Comparatively. It is still a very eccentric movie, but compared to 5, it is not as eccentric.
I mean, so the best parts of this movie are just the opening. They got a really cool animation where there's this like this woman's reading this like a fairy tale like.
She's giving us backstory for the leprechauns, and like,
or it's a single leprechaun. This is the one that puts a state like hurts my. There's multiple leprechaun theories because she says only one leprechaun stayed behind.
Yeah, and because they actually do give like in this actually surprisingly well animated intro. Where they have sort of this backstory about how leprechauns were sort of summoned by this ancient king to sort of guard his gold. And then after the king died, all these leprechauns sort of returned back into the earth, except for this one villainous, greedy leprechaun who just became corrupted as time passed and increasingly obsessed with his gold.
He's me gold. And then you get to like a pretty fun scene where a guy named Father Jacob is at like there's like a project he's working on like a youth center. It was a youth center. And he's like exorcising the leprechaun, and the leprechaun's like, "Oh, don't kill me!" And then he like sends the leprechaun down to hell, and then he dies. And it was a comparatively strong opening.
It feels a lot like the opening of the first film.
And then this movie it goes into we now follow new characters.
We follow a lot of characters.
Yeah, a lot of characters.
This has a huge cast.
And one of the earlier scenes, they go to a psychic, and remind me of that scene from Phantasm with the "Don't Fear" scene from Phantasm.
And that is also from Dune.
Is it also?
It is that scene from Phantasm is also from Dune. We'll discuss that when we get to Phantasm.
I've never seen Dune or read Dune. I'm scared of Dunes. Anyway, but they say you will get a gift, do not accept it, or something like that. Then later, while she and her friends,
our main character, what's her name? Emily. Emily is our main character.
Yeah, and she's hanging out at the where the project of the
Father
youth
Jacob.
Center, Father Jacob's youth center
has kind of fallen through.
It's fallen through, and then they find the leprechaun's gold. They like fall through the youth center. They find his gold. Like there's a rainbow there.
They find it buried underneath a very janky CGI rainbow.
And they're like, hey, we've got... So basically, obviously, that's the gift. You got all this money. They're now going to go splurge and buy all this stuff.
And you can assume what happens because the leprechaun.
Yeah, the leprechaun, you thought he was exorcised. No, you take his gold, he's back. The first thing he does is he goes to a party where... So all the characters buy all the stuff. And they're like, one of the guys is throwing a party. The leprechaun, the first thing he does, we see him... He goes and gets high with a guy in a bedroom at a party.
And stabs him with a bong.
He stabs him with a bong when he sees that the guy has one of his coins.
But then he gets extremely high, and then we just get a scene of like the leprechaun bumbling around in the
kitchen,
background, extremely high.
He's got the munchies. And he gets like knocked into the fridge, and I'm like, it's just like this is how you reintroduce your villain is just getting too high and not being able to move. And it's entertaining. It's Warwick Davis. We didn't even say, like, part 5 had that great line. It was, a friend with weed is a friend indeed, but a friend with gold is the best I'm told. And then he eats Ice-T's finger. And then there is, like, a good gag. Then that does lead to my actual favorite gag from 5, where later on they call back to that, where Ice-T just grabs a gun and is trying to shoot the protagonist, but then realizes he's missing a finger. Right. That was awesome.
That is actually, like, that 5 is cack, but that is the one moment that genuinely did make me laugh for intentional reasons.
So if Leprechaun into Hood, it's a very...
Not
the Hood.
The Hood. The Hood.
It's a very goofy kind of... it's a very goofy, lighthearted-ish movie in terms of just, like, it's here to entertain. This movie is much lower key comparatively. It's like a very classic slasher. It's probably the most classic slasher out of all these films. It has a lot of kills. This one has like the most kills out of any of these movies, and it's got some good stuff. I really like the part where they do another. It seemed like an homage to Killer Clowns, but may have not been. But he gets in a fight. Leprechaun gets in a fight with like a rival drug dealer, and he. The guy just... It's also like in part 8 when
of Friday the
13th when Jason and that boxer are fighting. But in this one, like the guy's trying to beat up Warwick Davis, then Warwick Davis just like rips his heart out, and then all the drug dealers just have a firing line and just a firing line. That's something about this movie. Everybody is trying to murder Warwick Davis in this movie. Every single character is armed in some way, and they're all trying to kill him. He is stabbed in the face with hair clippers. In the eye, right? In the eye, which leads to another one of the traditional leprechaun eye gags. They try to kill him by activating the hydraulics on the car so it's bumping up and down and trying to squish him under it. He gets shot with a lot of different guns. He gets thrown into a furnace, thrown into cement. He gets... Let's see, what else? He gets shot. He gets shot a lot. The police beat him up. One of those officers, by the way, is the voice of Jet Black in the English dub of Cowboy Bebop. So, Leprechaun killed that guy. Yeah, Leprechaun kills that guy. I don't remember if Bo Billingsley is the guy he rips the leg off of. But no, Warwick Davis. So this has my favorite look of the Leprechaun. I mean, they're all goofy, but this one has the most gothic look. He's got like a really dark top hat. He's got a good top hat. He definitely looks scarier than ever before. He looks much more intimidating. Not that he was ever. It's always been Leprechaun. Very silly, but this one he looks like actually kind of intimidating. But this one's definitely a more melodramatic film. They do still have some like dumb jokes that don't really... They got the massage parlor fat jokes. Yeah, it's better than the hate crimes of the last movie, but it's not great. Yeah, but... The horror and comedy in this one are kind of very extremely separate, because there's like... The comedy scenes are very like broad comedy, but then the horror scenes aren't like meant as very funny. They're just straight slasher kills. The characters aren't nearly as memorable in this one. You got that one guy who's got like the metal helmet that reminds me of Peacemaker or something. You got Emily. You got Lisa. I wrote down in my notes, Lisa was torn apart because there's a line. She's like, "You're tearing me apart" or something. I don't remember. Yeah. Insert the room joke here. There's the 4-leaf clovers as a weapon comes back in this one. It's pretty fun.
They make 4-leaf clover bullets.
Yeah, that, you would think that like would kill the leprechaun, but it only weakens him.
It doesn't, because the final few minutes of this film are like, best way I can describe it is in Scream, you have that classic moment of careful. This is where the killer always comes back for one last scare, and that happens in at pretty much nearly every slasher movie. This movie does that at least 3 or 4 different times in a row in the last 15 minutes, where he just refuses to die.
They show him with 4-leaf clover. Oh, he's back though because a gun jammed, and apparently 5 bullets to the chest for a normal person isn't enough. Okay, he's back. Oh, you throw him in a furnace, lock the door, and he's burned alive. Oh, that's gotta kill him. Oh no, all right, throw him in cement. Oh, that'll do the trick. Oh, it worked? Wait, that worked? I just hated how bullets and locking him in a furnace aren't as strong as throwing him in wet cement.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's a bit weird. It's a bit what else? Oh, the transitions, Max. The transitions in the movie.
They got like weird wipe like
no, page turns. It's
right.
comic book page turn transitions in this movie that seems like it's trying to take itself more seriously than the others, and yet it has the silliest scene transitions in the whole series.
Like, the editor was just like, hey, you know how we had that really cool animation sequence that was like a book at the beginning? Yeah. Well, what if we kept with that? And
the editor discovered iMovie.
The
editor clearly discovered iMovie.
This movie definitely felt more like an after-school special.
It felt like which is kind of fitting with the first one, because the first one feels like a very bizarre and twisted Disney Channel original movie. This one feels like a very bizarre and twisted after-school special.
I do like that this movie, I remember in my notes, they made a point, everyone's now calling each other ninja. My ninja.
Instead of the N-word, because
Because
I'd say they want that PG-13 rating, but they don't want that PG-13 rating.
It did lead to an interaction that made me laugh pretty hard. You got the white producer, and he says the N-word. It is a good gag where it's just they try to use it to keep white guy from saying the N-word. So it's just like, we're calling each other my ninja instead. It made me laugh. It was funny.
But they kind of just keep sticking with it.
I mean, yeah. But yeah, this is a pretty violent movie. This had one of the higher body counts, but I liked it. I would recommend this one, not to a lot of people. This is 100%, I keep saying this, comparatively, I would recommend this over a lot of the other ones.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I'm saying I prefer Leprechaun Back to the Hood than, the part 3, but, I enjoyed it.
It's not the worst. If you're just in for the long haul and have decided to watch all these movies, you have our sympathies, but this one's kind of one of the less painful ones.
Yeah, it's less. It gets pretty chaotic with gang and police violence against the leprechaun.
Yeah. It's the most traditionally slasher-like of the Leprechaun movies, I think. So if you do at least enjoy, turn your brain off, kind of dumb, just watch some ridiculous watch a lot of people die, kind of slasher movies, this will probably be one that I think you enjoy the most.
It takes some of the purposeful humor, but I think that does also add to some of its campy charm because it doesn't seem as self-aware, and makes some of the goofier moments work better for me. But yeah, this is the movie where they brought back the ripping the gold tooth out. That was from part.
But they do it even nastier this time.
They rip her jaw.
Rips the jaw out. He rips this woman's jaw out. I don't even know if it was the jaw the tooth was on. I don't even know. I don't even know if he actually had to rip out the jaw. He just kind of did it.
And there's also a reason this one why they can't give back his gold, because they spent it.
Yeah.
Most of it, but. Part 6 is good. Now we're on to God. Leprechaun Origins from WWE Studios.
From WWE Studios. Starring Dylan Postal, otherwise known as the wrestler Hornswoggle, as the Leprechaun.
You could have had anyone play the Leprechaun.
You could have had. Look, I'm just gonna get it out of the way right now. This is probably the worst of all these movies, and we've been through Leprechaun in the Hood. The series gets bad. Leprechaun Origins is painful. This is a very bad movie that is an attempt to do a completely serious, completely horrific Leprechaun movie, and it is an absolute failure. So the basic plot of this one is that we have your usual cast of disposable American college students, your traditional, like, mean-spirited, bland American college students who are just vacationing in Ireland. They're staying in a cottage in the woods, and they're being hunted by a leprechaun. Okay, no. We need to get this off the bat. The thing in this movie is it's not a leprechaun. This is not a leprechaun. It's a troll. It is a cave troll from Lord of the Rings. It is not a leprechaun. It does not have any lines. It does not have any one-liners. It's not even wearing anything. It's just this deformed albino.
If you've seen The Descent, you've seen
it's the monster from Descent. It's the monster from The Descent, but worse, and they can't even film it properly, and it just kind of screams at them and tries to scratch them, and then
remember how in the Justice League movie, Jared Leto scene when they just kept on going in focus, out of focus, and making it like that? That's how they shape the Leprechaun.
This movie is shot.
But it's darker. It's harder to see.
Yeah, the cinematography in this, Mullen Todd Williams, the cinematographer in this.
Calling out names.
Mullen Todd Williams, you have some stuff to answer for.
Yikes.
Why did you film this film like this? Why is everything so dark? Why is it so often out of focus?
Has he done anything else?
Why is it shaky cam? I do not know. He does not have an IMDb page.
Really?
Wait, no, he does have an IMDb page. He does not have a Wikipedia page, is what I'm trying to say. He has, done the cinematography.
The
for...
core? He was camera department.
Camera department. He was the cinematographer.
Scooby-Doo 2? Yes.
No, camera department again. He did a...
Christmas movie.
Not a
DC's
lot.
Legend of Tomorrow.
Something in ABC's of Death 2. Some music videos. So it seems like at least... He seems like I'm just going to chalk it up to some weird decisions.
He did The Weeknd? Some stuff for The Weeknd.
Yeah, I'm just going to chalk it up to some weird decisions on this one, but I still think he has some stuff to answer for how this film is shot. But anyways, they are not just being hunted by a leprechaun, they're also being hunted by a small cult of villagers who are sacrificing people to the leprechaun who has given them their gold in exchange for human sacrifices. So this is a cult movie. There is a cult in this. There's a leprechaun cult, and somehow this movie is boring.
I mean, I like that these movies are finally adding secondary villains besides Leprechaun. They got in part 3, it was the evil casino guy. 4 was Smitten Spider. 5 was Ice-T.
And this was 6 was kind of the cops, but also a lot of different people.
It was the drug rivals mostly.
But also the cops.
And then this one was, it was a conspiracy in a small town that, I mean, yeah, the biggest problem with this movie is it's just not very interesting. There aren't any characters I remember. It's hard to see a lot of it.
The characters are, like, very generic. If you've seen any movie that is clearly trying to do Hostel, you've seen these characters. Because they are just, like...
And
They're just like personality-less, kind of annoying Americans out of place.
The Leprechaun vision is just Predator vision, but yellow is Gold vision.
The Leprechaun's just Predator, basically. The Leprechaun's basically just an uglier version of Predator. But this just makes me wish I was watching Predator instead.
So even though this one, I believe, was the latest one to be in actual theaters, I believe in some theaters, I might have to double check that, but this feels definitely. They all feel made for TV, but this one
doesn't even feel made for TV. This just feels like
I feel like they just tried too hard to hide their budget. They didn't have an interesting story, and it's barely even 90 minutes. It's like painfully slow. You can't even really tell what's going on. It's a Leprechaun movie. It's on the council, but we do not grant it the rank of master. In fact, we do not even want it on the council, but it is in the collection on Blu-ray. And I really don't have a lot to say about it. There's a few good kills.
Really?
Yeah, they got that scene where like they smash the girl's head comes through when they think it's the leprechaun. They're about to like hit it with an axe or something.
Oh yeah, they accidentally kill one of their own. Yeah.
That was okay. I'm trying to say nice things. There was There was one character I actually liked, or thought they could have done something interesting with. I liked the main bad guy that wasn't the leprechaun, the head of the village, his son who didn't want to be killing people.
Yeah, like the internal conflict.
Again,
That's
comparatively, that could have been something.
Yeah, they do act. I won't say they're not actually trying in this one. I just don't think it's like. I don't think
It's
it's
just a bad idea from the get-go.
I think in retrospect, I probably blame most of this on like producers, where it's just like okay, we're just trying to do a dark reboot for no reason whatsoever. It's just like they're just like the idea of just too many dark and edgy reboots is frustrating to me, and this is like, we did not need this to be done, and it's just like a very bad idea that I don't think anyone in the production really could have salvaged.
Yeah, it's just not interesting, not scary.
It does have one interesting thing in it. It is the least Irish movie set in Ireland ever made. I am pretty sure this is shot in Canada. Nobody in this has Irish accents. There are no Irish accents. None of it actually looks like Ireland. It was filmed in Canada. It was filmed in Vancouver. That Irish city of Vancouver. They had a Leprechaun movie in Ireland, and they did nothing with it.
No,
that hurts me.
It didn't really need to be Ireland. Also, the final shot just adds so many questions with all the multiple leprechauns.
There are multiple leprechauns in this movie.
But it's okay, she's safe because she like killed the bad guy. She's like out of the ring. It's basically
there's a ring of
you cross the threshold and the leprechauns won't chase you anymore. And it's like, oh, that's beautiful, great.
Yeah.
I don't really recommend this.
I'm trying to
think of a scenario where I would recommend it. I guess that would be if you're a WWE completionist or you love Hornswoggle, and then you'll be disappointed.
You'll be very disappointed. He has no lines in this. He does nothing in this. You might as well not even put him in the film. That's kind of a waste, because it's like, okay, you're gonna try, like tons of wrestlers have sort of made the jump into acting before. Like you could have given him lines. You could have let him actually play the role of the Leprechaun, but you did nothing with it. I feel sorry for him, because they had a potential to give him like a fun like slasher movie villain role, and he got nothing out of it. I feel really sorry for that poor guy.
I remember at the beginning, before it got dark out and you couldn't see anything on screen, because we watched it on a big TV, so we should have been able to see everything. But they were like going to go on like a hike or something down into this like cave of the Leprechaun. There was like a setup or something where it could have gone interesting, but then it just became a home invasion.
The setup where it almost became The Descent instead of just generic home invasion movie. Yeah,
but like, I usually like generic home invasion movies enough.
Yeah, but this was just.
Yeah, this was.
I feel bad for a lot of the crew on this, because it's like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna like? How do you salvage this? This is like something where the producers told you you're going to do this.
I love the cover they have with Hornswoggle in the front, where they just take the normal cover of a hand with gold in it, and then they just have Hornswoggle, who's you don't see his face in the movie. It's just like a wrestler. I thought it was funny.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this. Some of the crew on this do end up going on to better stuff. The director Zach Lipovsky, a few years later, he does a sci-fi film called Freaks that seems to be fairly well critically received. So he at least kind of turns it around after this. So he kind of like does make a comeback and like
hopefully
salvage it.
I haven't seen any of the other movies.
I'm rooting for him. I'm rooting for him, honestly. I want to see these guys. Like, I made jokes, especially like about the cinematographer earlier, but I do want to see these guys kind of make it out of this. Like, I feel like not a lot of this. There wasn't a lot they could have done to salvage this because of just the bizarre decisions that like the producers clearly made on it. I want to see them do better.
I don't know enough about the backstory of how this was made. Yeah, obviously this is not going to be a hate letters to these guys. But yeah, it is bad. It deserves all of the negative reviews.
It is very bad.
Rest in peace, Leprechaun Origins. Woof. Part 8.
Part 8, Leprechaun Returns.
We're back on track. I actually really liked this one.
Here's the shocker. Leprechaun Returns might actually be my favorite of these movies. Like, this one, after sort of going through the whole series, this last one kind of knocked me out of the park because I did not expect it to be as entertaining as it was.
It's like, again, comparatively, after watching 6 movies that were varying in different bads of bad, this is a movie that I would actually hesitate to say is good. I liked it. It was actually a fun movie. Leprechaun rides a drone. It's great.
Yeah, and part of that is it's actually the first one of these movies to have real, genuine continuity. This is a direct sequel to the original Leprechaun that kind of ignores all the other films, but also possibly ties them together. So the basic plot of this is it ends after the end of the original Leprechaun, where the Leprechaun is sort of sealed away inside a well, shot with a four-leaf clover, and possibly explodes, but a piece of him is left behind, which allows him to regenerate. 25 years later, like Dale Cooper in Twin Peaks The Return, again with the Twin Peaks parallels, he returns, and specifically, he is going after Lila, who is the daughter of Tori from the original film, and also Ozzy, who returns. Ozzy is back, and this time his whole backstory is extremely sad.
No, oh, yeah.
Because everybody from the original film who is either implied to be returning is very sad. Because Tori has essentially been treated like she's crazy because of her experiences with the Leprechaun and has basically died in a mental institution. And Ozzy is just still
she died from
living.
Cancer, right?
She's dying she dies of cancer in a mental ward, and Ozzy is just kind of gone nowhere with his life. He's just kind of living around the same place, still doing the same thing he was doing years earlier. He still remembers what happened, and this is not a spoiler because this happens really early in the movie. He dies. The Leprechaun kills him by bursting out of his stomach.
He gives a great, like, luckily he comes back as a ghost, but even then, like, it's
Mark
tragic.
Holton is like the Warwick Davis is the obvious MVP of these movies, but Mark Holton in 1 and 8 is the secret MVP of these movies. Because he is like the one who kind of comes under the wire, and especially in 8, he is like the one who is clearly delivering like the best performance in the film. He is like the one who is, in 8, becomes like the actual emotional core of the movie, and actually gets like surprisingly moving scenes. Like,
there's a part in
you feel for him.
He's in the car with Jennifer Aniston's daughter, and he finds out that she's his daughter, or she's her daughter, and that she died, and he's got this moment in the car that's very subtle, and I was like, don't make me cry, Leprechaun Returns. This is good.
Yeah, and it's like, it's sad. There's actual sad moments in this film. But back to the basic plot. So Lila, Tori's daughter, has ended up returning to the house 25 years later as part of a sorority group that is trying to remodel it into a eco-friendly home. And of course, they all awaken the Leprechaun, and everything goes to hell.
And the Leprechaun, this time, again, not Warwick Davis.
Not Warwick Davis. This is an actor named Lyndon Porco, and he's actually pretty good in this.
He's a good spiritual successor to him because he gets the energy right. His voice is a little too high. I think he sometimes sounds a little too goofy compared to what I was expecting.
But he has that energy.
But he matches the energy perfectly.
Right. He has the energy right, and more importantly, in terms of rhyming, he has graduated from couplets to limericks, which is a natural choice I am shocked the movies did not make before this one. He is doing limericks in this film, and it is wonderful.
So this movie is definitely this movie brings back the jokes and the humor. And I do like, there's some really funny jokes, like there are some of the jokes bomb. There are some that like kind of fall flat, but there are also a lot that actually land. Well, there are some very genuinely funny moments in this film. There's as I was saying, like, there's a lot of moments where they're like, yes, we're going to do something intense or something scary is going to happen, and someone says a funny joke, and then they're like, oh, haha, tension's cut. And I usually don't mind that when it's done right. This is bordering, I think, kind of they do it a little too much, where it's a little too many times where they're like, they just make a joke right in the middle of a very intense scene, where it's like,
yeah,
we know you guys are funny. You guys have proven you're funny, but you know.
Yeah, they do that a bunch, but there's
Warwick
also
Davis is the comedian here.
Yeah, there's also some genuinely funny moments. There's like they bring back so much from the previous films. They bring back his old like strengths and weaknesses, so it's not like he has unlimited powers. He's like he can mimic voices. He's strong. He's clever. He's pretty much invincible. And they really milk the comedy out of that, which I really like. There's a lot of great gags in it where it's just like the Leprechaun completely shrugging off like gushing flesh wounds and just not caring about his injuries, which is a great use of that for black comedy.
Yeah, and it's what was I gonna say? He's definitely going full Freddy Krueger here. He like makes a joke after every kill. The kills are probably the most gruesome.
They are the most. This is the goriest Leprechaun film. This is absolutely like the goriest Leprechaun film. It's by Stephen Kostansky, who's part of a Canadian film production collective known as Astron 6, who work a lot in like very like weird pastiche horror comedy. They most recently did the film Psycho Gorman, so they've got like a small but fairly significant cult following, and it's pretty clear that Sir Kostansky took that to heart, because this is very much like a very gory horror comedy with a lot of like very gory practical effects kills. There's a guy gets cut in half with a falling solar panel.
Probably the best one.
Someone's like
I love the
with
fountain thing.
Someone's impaled with like a flying fountain head, and a blood is spurting out of the fountain head. It's
like
the
Phantasm.
It is the most gruesome death. It has the most gruesome violence in the series, but it also uses a lot of that like violence for dark humor in almost a kind of Evil Dead 2-ish way.
In terms of some of the humor not working, the Leprechaun definitely is much hornier in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like okay.
Yeah, the Leprechaun is very horny in this movie, and
He's a peeping Tom.
I don't really appreciate that. I don't think the Leprechaun needed to be horny for the director's vision to come across, but it's there, I guess.
Something that did make me laugh. One of my favorite like recurring gags in the movie and probably the series is just the Leprechaun getting used to selfies. There's like a scene.
No, not in the series. He does
it twice, but
he does it in this movie only, I think.
Right, but
just
no, but I'm
repeatedly.
talking about favorite gag, like in general in the series. But
I still think my favorite moment is Werner Herzog would be proud.
So
there's a lot of film references in this one. There is one point in this film where the Leprechaun does a straight up Apocalypse Now reference. This is more film reference heavy than any of them.
This is a movie where the writer/director wants us to know he knows movies.
Also, there is a character who is a film student, and he's talking about. I think actually my favorite gag in the movie. It's more of like a subtle like film nerd gag where he's or like film student gag where he's just talking about, oh, I'm making a documentary and I'm letting the landscape be the character. And from what we see in the film, it is 100% drone shots. It is just drone shots of a landscape. He's
got like a TV camera, like a small like little digital camera, but he only films like a leprechaun runs by and like a mont.
And also a lot of shots of the landscape on drones.
Yeah, that's his main.
Which is just like a good subtle like film student kind of joke. Like,
yeah, this was definitely. I feel like the director went to film school.
Yeah, the director probably went to a film school and has some unsolved business from that.
I don't know what the film school character guy was doing when he's like, I'll hold him off, and he just starts flying his drone. I'm like, what was your plan?
This man clearly did not.
He had
have
no
a plan.
He just flew his drone, saw the leprechaun, then the leprechaun hijacked it, and then
cut his head off with it.
With a drone. Like, I don't know how that happens, but it was cool. And he had the leprechaun's like, lights, camera, decapitation. It's like, puns.
Yeah,
dad jokes.
But yeah, it like actually has some kind of consistent lore with the rest of the series.
They bring back the iron.
They actually bring back the iron from 2, yeah, because they imply that and they actually give a reason for why he's weak to iron. They bring back the shoes. They give a reason why he's weak to iron, because iron is the key component in Fool's Gold.
That's clever.
That is like, they actually explain why he's weak to iron, and they use that in the end to try and destroy him. They do have like one scene near the end where it's just a bunch of mini leprechauns, where it's clear like, okay, they are taking complete advantage of this premise as much as they can. And it's like, it's my favorite in the series for that reason. It's like, okay, we're going back to the original one. We're going to take advantage of this premise in a way that 2 did, but with something that's more polished like 1. It kind of blends the qualities of the first 2 films in a way that I think I actually like the best out of any of them. So,
yeah, I mean, the characters are pretty good in this movie. They come across a bit, MCU, with every line being a one-liner. Ozzy, though, fantastic. He comes back.
Ozzy is great. Ozzy is like the emotional core of the movie.
Ozzy, they just need to make an Ozzy spinoff.
Just bring him back. You can ignore him being dead. It's Leprechaun. You can ignore continuity.
I definitely recommend Return of Leprechaun Returns to just horror fans in general. It's good enough to just be a good movie on its own.
Yeah, it's like it's still like the very goofy, campy kind of Leprechaun style, but it's probably the best execution of that.
Well, it's just like if I saw it on its own, I would be like picking apart the plot and the characters. But I was just such a breath of fresh air that I'm actually like enjoying one of these.
Yeah.
So yeah, I really like that. Now before we
before we go on and before you say what you're going to say, we have two more things to cover, and very briefly, those are the two unmade Leprechaun movies.
Ooh.
The first one, this is a relatively recent one that has been pitched. Darren Lynn Bousman, who is known for working primarily in the Saw franchise and also directing Repo the Genetic Opera, has apparently pitched a Leprechaun reboot, bringing back Warwick Davis. His intended premise is that he wants to set it during the Colorado Gold Rush.
Wow.
Which I think is actually a fun place to put that. Like, you got a fun historical setting. You could probably get a lot of mileage out of that. Plus, it's also tied into the gold. That's not the crazy one. The crazy one here is the crossover that was almost made. Leprechaun versus Candyman. Or actually, Candyman versus Leprechaun. There was a script treatment written after Freddy vs. Jason came out. Davis was set to reprise his role. However, Tony Todd and the Candyman creative team did not want to do it. And I completely get why. Tony Todd has been very clear about that. Candyman is a series that's very much tied to like these American racial tensions. It is this thing that is very social horror. And just throwing it into something as ridiculous as Leprechaun probably isn't going to work. And I agree with him. I think that's fair. I still kind of want to see what the movie would have been like out of morbid curiosity, but I do agree with him that it probably should not have existed.
I feel like that would be the equivalent of Get Out, but the Always Sunny in Philadelphia crew shows up.
Oh, God.
Danny DeVito. Oh, God. All right.
Anyways,
do we want to go best to worst or worst to best or middle to best than middle to worst?
Let's go worst to best. Let's rank these worst to best.
The only reason why I would say the other way around is because the series itself, the lows are lower than the highs.
I think we gotta start from the lows and work our way up to the relative highs.
Well, I think we can both agree at number 8. We're not including a very unlucky Leprechaun because we have yet to finish that one.
Yeah. Leprechaun Origins. I don't think we even need to build it up. It's Leprechaun Origins. This is just... I feel actively sorry for the crew on this because it's just... There's not much they could have done to salvage this.
Maybe it was a passion project. We don't know.
It was like a needless, edgy reboot. Hard to tell what's actually going on in this. Like, just very generally bland overall. And yeah, it is a film that actively kind of misunderstands what this series is.
Yeah, they tried something different, and by doing something different, they try to make it as generic and boring as possible. So it cancels out. I'm saying Leprechaun Origins is my least favorite as well. Number 7, I am putting down Leprechaun 3. Surprise, surprise. That one just...
What? Lower than In the Hood?
Yes, because this one just bored me the most. I liked the acting of Scott and Art, but yeah, this Fazio was fun. I don't know. This one just kind of bored me.
My number 7 is actually In the Hood. This one, you heard my feelings on this one. This one just shattered my brain. I cannot understand why they made the choices they do. There's just some weird, mean-spirited stuff in it that hasn't aged well. It's a clusterfuck of a film, and there are other films in this series that are also clusterfucks, but 4 is a clusterfuck, but 4 is an entertaining clusterfuck. This is just a mess, and I cannot understand it, and I cannot say anything that can salvage it. But it's not as bad as Origins.
Yeah, it's true. Your number 6?
My number 6 is actually 3. I agree with your problems. I think it does kind of hit a groove once it starts going, but it takes too long to get there is kind of my issue with it. Like, there's definitely some creativity, and you can tell my boy Brian Trenchard-Smith is trying, but yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I did In the Hood next. I just think Postmaster P was fun enough that I put it above 3. Also, I don't know, a good line from the Leprechaun in this one.
Like one or two good gags.
One or two good gags.
But it was just not worth the madness.
No,
it was not worth us sacrificing our sanity.
It was probably the weirdest one, even weirder than Space. Just from
somehow even weirder than Space.
Maybe just because it was so like it felt so not like juvenile, but also just like amateurish in how it was made.
Which actually brings us to my
but
number 5.
We do get Lep of the Hood come to do no good.
Your comment actually does bring us to my number 5, which is Leprechaun 4 in Space.
We have the exact same again, Leprechaun in Space, in Spider. As I know I said it's the best and the worst at the same time, and just like it's in the middle for me.
It kind of evens out. It's like it's kind of the half bad and the half entertaining. It's parts of it kind of work together. It depends on how much of it is intentional. It depends on how much of this is intentionally meant to be this silly, and how much of this is just completely unintentional. But either way, it's a mess, but it's entertaining. It's like entertainingly weird.
Yeah, I mean, Leprechaun 4, 5, and 3 are pretty even with me. But this is just how I feel at the moment. 4, they went for it. As I said, they swung for the fences, and what happened after, I don't know. Number 4, I put Leprechaun Back to the Hood.
That is my number 4 as well.
Wow, great minds think alike. This movie feels more professional than Part 5. It's better pacing, better kills, about the same quality of characters.
More kills.
I think they're better, like the late stuff with the police. Warwick Davis is like doing his A game.
It's his best look. Warwick Davis is really trying well. Like, he's having fun. Warwick Davis is always having fun in these, though. He's always bringing his A game.
And that brings us, I guess that's all I can say about that. We've already talked about it.
It's solid. It's solid. I don't have much to say about it that we haven't already said beyond that. It's solid. What's your number 3?
My 3 is Leprechaun 2. I love Leprechaun 2, and I hate it at the same time. When I first watched it, I gave it a 2 out of 5 stars. It probably deserves less and more. I don't know. This movie has some fun moments, some very gross moments that not just don't age well.
Yeah.
But
that happens a lot with these kind of series, unfortunately. Like, there's always going to be, in these kind of older series, there's always going to be like depictions and that do not age well, especially since horror is so much about shock and stuff, and a lot of stuff that can be shocking in those times is just not really acceptable nowadays, especially when we look at like the portrayal of trans people in this series, especially.
Well, just in 4 and 5, or 5, 4 and 5, yeah.
Or just kind of in horror in general a lot. And we'll discuss this issue more when we get to the sleepaway camp movies, which are coming in the next few episodes.
Do not spoil it. I love that movie. Leprechaun 2, though, is what can I say? It's got good moments. I like the character of Scotty and Chad. I can't remember his name, but I liked him.
Morty.
Morty and the other kid though. Cody, right? Cody. Yeah. And Bridget was
Scott is from 3. Scott is from 3.
Scott was a weird performance, but I remember Scott.
Yeah.
And he goes on to write some fun movies I really like. Can't wait for Godzilla vs. Kong. He didn't write it, but I love that movie.
I agree with you. Leprechaun 2 is also my number 3, kind of for the same reasons, honestly.
I thought you were going to put it above 1.
I have been torn about that, but I think it still falls below 1. I think it's got a bit more creativity than 1 and embraces the premise a bit more. I just don't think it comes together as well as 1. It doesn't hold together as a film as well as the first one does.
And that brings me to my number 2, which is going to be number 1.
The original.
I liked this original as I gave this a 3 out of 5 when I first saw it, which means I just liked it a little more than I disliked it. When I rate this on Letterboxd, I usually go with like 2.5 is the most meh. Anything below is I don't like it. Anything above is I do like it.
That's a fair rating.
So I gave it. I liked it a little more than I disliked this one. I like the setting. Ozzy's great. It's got an actual. It does feel like if it wasn't for the gore, this would be a fun, spooky movie to show the kids on Halloween. If I had kids,
almost a good first horror movie. Almost.
And then you get the pogo stick scene.
And then you get the even without the pogo stick scene, it'd probably be fine. There's just a couple cuss words and like some mostly bloodless violence, but then there's just one really gory scene.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fun. And what you got? Is that your number 2? Also,
that is also my number 2. So our rankings kind of align a lot in this. I kind of agree with you on it. It's like it's a bit silly. It's kind of like got some stuff that feels a little weird, especially in terms of tone, but it's charming enough. It's like a fun, decent little like late 80s, early 90s kind of slasher film.
And watching young Jennifer Aniston be embarrassed by this movie just makes me...
It's entertaining. She's giving it her all. And so is Mark Holton. Mark Holton is kind of one of the secret MVPs of this series, and of course Warwick Davis.
And so that brings us to our number 1, which is Leprechaun Returns.
Is also my number 1. This is my favorite in the series somehow.
Yeah, somehow. It's a movie about sorority girls in the middle of nowhere being attacked by a person who's replaced Warwick Davis as Leprechaun, and it's somehow the best one. Like, how is the best one not with Warwick Davis? That is
somehow. I don't know how, but they did it. Partially because they do kind of embrace the tone of the first 2 movies, and like I said...
It balances out better than most of them.
They kind of mix that creativity of the second one with the polish of the first one. And it's like... It's the most consistent out of all of them. It's the one that kind of nails that horror comedy tone down well.
It's got the best pacing, some of the best humor. It looks the best in terms of polish. It's a little too digital at points, but...
There's some good atmosphere in that movie. There's actually some really good moments of cinematography, especially like with the outdoor scenes.
And while we don't...
the heavy fog and that kind of lighting.
And while we don't see Leprechaun sped up on his tricycle running out of a barn...
We do get the Leprechaun riding a drone in a car chase.
Which is great.
Which is great.
And then another great gag where they run the car and then they start talking like, "You think we got," and then you hear Leprechaun say, "You think we got away?" And he's right in the middle between them.
It is a great gag. And they literally film it so that you don't even see him there. So it's just lifted up enough so you only see like the top of his head. It is a great gag. That is why it's my favorite. There is like genuinely clever horror comedy in it. I kind of want to see more of Kostansky's work after this. Yeah, amazing practical effects.
So yeah, there we have it.
That is our Leprechaun ratings. I would recommend Leprechaun Returns, maybe the original and 2. The rest are if you really want to watch them, probably do not watch In the Hood or Origins. In my opinion, you don't need to do that to yourself.
Are any of these none of these movies are A movies.
They're not essentials. You don't need to watch the Leprechaun movies.
I feel like you should watch one Leprechaun movie in your life and either do Returns or Leprechaun 1.
Yeah.
And Leprechaun 2 is, if you like that movie enough, you might like Leprechaun 2.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. I feel like
it's not an essential series, honestly. It's fun enough at its best.
Just watch one of them.
But you don't need to watch the whole series. All you really need to watch is Returns. You don't even need much of the context from the original to watch Leprechaun Returns. It explains enough.
After we do a few franchises, we should go rank all the franchises based on best to worst franchise.
Oh God!
This would
that's gonna be painful.
This would probably be fairly low.
Yeah.
I mean, there's enough charm to these.
They're at least trying. They're charming.
And Brian Trenchard-Smith is...
Trenchard-Smith's cool.
I really wish I liked his versions more because I love...
Yeah, I wanted to really like those movies, but I still like Brian Trenchard-Smith. I still think
he's a good director. He's a great director. It's just it's really hard to make a good Leprechaun movie because you really got hitting. This horror comedy is a really tricky thing to nail, and it's like real. None of them nail perfectly. Yeah,
he tried. A lot of these people tried. I think Davis with the original and Kostansky with the remake are kind of the ones who get that horror comedy tone down the best out of all of them.
Yeah. But I like it when it doesn't come across as too self-aware because it just adds to some of the so bad it's good. But yeah, avoid Origins unless you want to support. It's not indie though. It's not an indie film.
It's WWE Studios. The only person you're going to be supporting it is Vince McMahon, and you don't want to support Vince McMahon.
Yeah, so okay, don't watch Origins.
Don't watch Origins. Your money will go straight to Vince McMahon, and nobody wants that except Vince McMahon.
You're going to watch it on Amazon Prime, and all your money will go to Jeff Bezos and Vince McMahon, and all you get is Leprechaun Origins.
That's a pretty shit deal.
This is why we own it on Blu-ray. All right,
that is our first episode. Next episode, we will be back with a significantly longer series, and one that also takes some very bizarre turns when it starts heading into the direct-to-video territory. Except this one does not have murderous Warwick Davis. This one has a lot of murderous little people. That is right, we are doing Children of the Corn next. I do not know why we're doing Children of the Corn next. As you will find out next week, some of these movies have just been pain, but we've done it. We're doing it.
We have about 4 left in that series, so we could we'll maybe see you in 2 weeks or something.
Hopefully we will see you in 2 weeks. But anyways, I am Quinn Bailey.
And I am Maxwell Corman.
Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to, do all the things you usually do with a channel or podcast or all that. Like, comment, subscribe. It feels wrong saying that. It just...
Smash that like button, Pewdie Bros. Hiya.
But yeah, remember, like, comment, and subscribe, and follow us for more episodes. We're going to try to put these out consistently. We have a couple episodes lined up. We're going to be doing... In the relatively near future, we are going to be doing Children of the Corn. We're going to be doing the Ring movies, for which Max has actually read the original source material. We are going to be doing the Sleepaway Camp films, and after that, it's pretty much an open slate.
I mean, if someone has a recommendation...
If there is anything you guys want to see us do, please comment below. Especially if it's Alien. Because I want to do Alien.
We could do Alien now. I know this movie's pretty well.
Yeah, I think on the one hand, I probably need to rewatch Alien Resurrection. On the other hand, I don't really need to rewatch Alien Resurrection. It's a trade-off.
Remember, guys, to follow us on Twitter, YouTube, IMDb Pro, Google+, Tinder, Grindr, Bumble, MySpace. Quibi.
Quibi, of course. Can't forget Quibi. The streaming platform of the future.
Follow us on Mubi. Tubi. Also, I'm going to plug in, free of charge, Tubi. Tubi, I love you.
Tubi, you are great. You are responsible for getting us a lot of good films, especially in these series, for free. We do not have a sponsorship from Tubi. We just like Tubi. Please sponsor us, Tubi. Please give us money.
Tubi. All right, that was fun.
All right, that is it for today's episode. Thank you so much, and have a great day.